Jai Waetford, how are you, brother?
Good, my bro. How are you?
What were the repercussions of having that level of fame at that age?
I was so terrified of making a decision, any decision, because the decisions that I'd made leading up to that point had all failed. What I want from this phase is to look back at the end of every month and know that I haven't sacrificed any of my being to get to the end of that month, or any of my character, or any of my happiness.
Why you always running from me?
G'day and welcome to the potty, in which I connect with some of the most influential guests from across Australia and the globe to share their very inspirational stories. I was born with cystic fibrosis, a chronic illness in which I was told would most certainly ruin my life. But like many of the incredible humans that I have on this show, I'm on a mission to prove that we aren't defined by our circumstances, but rather how we choose to respond to them. I'm your host, the captain of the ship and the man in charge, Bradley J. Dryborough, and this is a lot to talk about. Jai Waetford, how are you, brother?
Good, my bro. How are you?
Yeah, really good. I have to say, we were just talking before, probably for half an hour.
Just a cheeky 30 minutes, yeah.
Little cheeky chat. And I have to say, I found myself smiling and I said to you, I know we're going to have a great chat today.
100%.
You know, it's funny that so far my relationship with you has been seeing what you do online, and there's a whole story to it which we'll get into. But it's always fascinating for me that, you know, who you see and meet online, you know, you can meet a completely different character in real life.
100%.
And that's not to say that your online isn't authentic, but your online's about your art, you know, your music,
100%.
your fashion.
100%.
Bro, I've just sat down for half an hour and had one of the most thoughtful conversations about love and perspective I've had in a long time. And so I love that there's a depth to you that I don't think people get to see in the short form.
Definitely not, man. And I think that has something to do with, I don't want to say it's a fault, but it definitely has something to do with the overarching factor that there's a lot of people that come into play with my professionalism online. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a brand, it's an image, and there's that requires, you know, constant upkeep of consideration from multiple people that isn't always me. You know what I mean? And I think that I kind of set that standard. I don't want to say wrong, but there was definitely a better way that I could have done it from the start. Yeah. I think I always felt because I started this when I was like 14. You know what I mean? I'm about to be 25 in a couple of weeks, so it's been like 11 years, of having to maintain a social presence and maintain a brand so that creativity could flow. I think as an artist, you know, a couple of years ago, it was dangerous to be too accessible. And I think that there's also beauty in that it's nice to be able to have conversations in private where people can come to see who you are. And I feel like you can relate in that sense when you sit and speak with the guests on your podcast and be able to see who they are, but then also in terms for them to be able to see who you are. I think there's beauty in not necessarily showing everything. You know what I mean? And I truly believe that not everyone has to know who I am. Truly, you know what I mean? I think that also, and it might sound a little bit self-conceited, but nor does everyone online deserve to. I think you open up yourself to a world that, and we spoke about this before, doesn't know how to receive who you are. You know what I'm saying? And I've always appreciated reciprocation through the love and energy that I give in everything that I do. So I think it can be dangerous when talking about online presence and being so open, and I respect you and commend you for being so open on your socials, but I think that in the artist world, in the music world, it only gives people room to move negatively. And it gives people the space to speak on things that they don't understand. And I think there's a very fine line and a balance when you cross social media with artistry, but also being true to self. And I try and be as true to self as I can. Like, I try not to come across like I care too much on social media. I post very infrequently. I mean, honestly, Instagram, I could not give a fuck about. Like, I could give two craps about how many likes I get to how many comments I get. So I don't even reply to Instagram comments on when I post. I think also because I've become jaded and desensitized to what social media is. And unlike yourself, I never started with a platform in which I could share knowledge and information in a positive sense. I was always getting judged and always hated on and always negativity thrown at me. So I think over the last 10 years, it's kind of just got me to a point now where it's like, I'll show you what you need to see and what I feel like, you know, is a accurate representation of who I am. But there's also parts of me that I enjoy protecting. And these conversations are new to me, you know what I'm saying, publicly. So I think it would be cool to kind of change that, right? And start letting people know who I am or what I do and why I do what I do. I think we're moving into a world now and a time now where talent is everywhere, and there's so many beautiful, talented people. But like, if I want to, you know, maintain the career that I have, like, people need to see how and why we as creatives do what we do. It's not good enough. The final product is no longer good enough as an influencer or as a model or as a musician or as a whatever, right? Like, there has to be a reason as to why you do what you do for people to attach themselves to, because it's so, we have access to everyone. You could find another version of me at surface level. You could find another one who has a nice Instagram feed, who posts cool videos and can sing anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of them, you know what I'm saying? So it's now, I'm at the point now where it's like, it doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter, I mean, it matters, but like, to the people that have negative or bad things to say, it's not for them. You know what I mean?
Man, this is a really interesting conversation.
And it's a very fine line as well, right? Like, it's quite...
It is a very fine line. It's very hard to walk the line between being too in and too far out.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find to be fascinating is that I believe in many regards, vulnerability is something we didn't experience a lot of 5 years ago. And hence it's been highly rewarded on social media
For sure.
and in art, which then also exposes us to this desire to overshare and share on stuff that we really haven't even made our own opinions or minds up on yet, because potentially there's an ROI on that online that will build you build you a following and build you a fan base. And so I find myself consistently questioning whether what I'm hearing is authentic or not. I've never been musically inclined. I played guitar when I was a young man, and one of my good mates, Ben Tambaya, shout out to Benny, we went to school together. And we found ourselves every now and then on a weekend we busk up at Kiraville Village, not because we're good, but we're just 16 and wanted some cash. And somehow on a few occasions made some cash. Even one of my other childhood mates, Reese, played the bongos, not because he was good at the bongos, but because he heard we're making some cash. And so we had a bit of fun with that, but I've never been musically inclined. But I will say, like a lot of people, I love music. And I love artists that make me think about, you know, my life, make me reflect, introspect, encourage me to think about what I'm experiencing. And I particularly have enjoyed listening to Zane Lowe's podcast, where he speaks to a lot of musicians. One guy I've also enjoyed listening to is Rick Rubin. What an insightful guy. Super. I listened to him, would have been maybe Saturday evening, Sunday morning. Found myself listening to a guest conversation that he'd been a part of. And almost the opening line of the podcast, he was asked his inspiration and motivation to create and whether that involved the audience or not. And he said that in fact, everything he's ever made has been made selfishly out of a desire to create something that he loves authentically. And it just so happens to be that a lot of the audience like it too. And I found that really interesting. And he spoke about how when you create with the audience in mind, you are enticed to be inauthentic. For sure, dude. So I completely get what you mean. And so let's talk about your beginnings in this, because I think that's a fitting place to start. I often like to recall where I first come across a guest. And I'll say that I can remember being sat on a lounge in one of my family homes. I can't remember which one it was. It was now over 10 years ago. And seeing this little teeny bopper pop up on TV who was not too different to me in age and just blow away a nation. You know, you become somewhat a child star in Australia for your incredible talent and ability to move people musically. And, you know, we got to watch you at a time in which, mate, TV was the thing back then.
Sure.
Bro, X Factor is what families did. We sat down at night and we all love music and entertainment. We got to watch you over the course of, you know, a series of, I guess, maybe like 2 months, you know, perform every week and hang in there. And, you know, you were third on that season. And at the time, it just doesn't, you know, we're in Australia. Australia's a little bit different to the US. We hear a lot more of these stories in the US. You know, as I look back now as a grown man, and I think you don't ever really see these success stories of the young kid who got famous, who handles it all that well. Like, how did you handle having that time?
That's arguable. It's interesting that you say that because, again, right, comes back to like public perception of what was going down, and obviously I was painted to be like a young kid that loved music and loved his family, and that's all true. I love music and I love my family, and I think that at that specific time in my life there was no real preconceived ideas of what life could be like because of the path that I was choosing to take. I was just having fun, man. Like, it was a dare from a couple of mates. They're like,
really?
Yeah, because most of the skate park was nearby. They're like, yo, why don't you do it? You're good, like, just go have a crack. I was like, nah. I went home and told my mum, and mum was like, good luck. Let me know how you go. And I was like, oh, mum, sweet. Whatever, and we went, and then, I think it was like 6 months later, I had amassed a ridiculous following on social media, and I was getting recognized everywhere I went, and life moved and changed so quickly that I never really had time to stop and process what was going on. You know what I mean? And I think that there was beauty in the ignorance of that. I think it allowed me to have a very carefree perspective on what was going on. I think it affected me later down the track when, you know, it became a profession and a job. I didn't really have a concept of what that was. I'd never worked a job. I've never worked a job. I've always been blessed to work for myself. But yeah, at the beginning, it was kind of just like, oh, this is happening. Like, hey, can we get a photo? Yeah, sure. Hey, you're playing this show for this ridiculous amount of money? Yeah, sure. I never really stopped and was like, hang on a second, like, this isn't normal. You know what I'm saying? And the repercussions of this can be really, really dangerous. And there's no one around you that can advise you otherwise because they're all in the exact same boat as you are.
It's so interesting that you speak about the naivety, the blissful ignorance that you have when you go and partake in a dare, right? To be a part of what essentially changes your life forever. And that's what those young teenage years are supposed to be about. You know, your mates dare you to do something that, you know, encourages you to summon a bit of courage. And, you know, you go and do it and you have fun and you have a laugh and you're back at the skate park with your mates and you're hanging out at the beach on the weekend for a surf. And, you know, you're starting to figure out who you are, what interests you. And then the next, you know, really like 10 or so years into your early 20s are supposed to be about experiencing life on your terms, making mistakes, figuring out, you know, what sets the soul on fire, what doesn't, you know, going on dates, doing it in private, falling in love, having your heart broken. All of these things are supposed to be experienced by you in your world. But you're now in a position where the most formative years in your life are going to be experienced with an audience of people telling you what's right and what's wrong. And it's hard for you to figure out what truly is when you're clouded by all of that. Like, what were the repercussions of having that level of fame at that age?
I think probably I missed out on the core fundamentals of what make you a man. You know what I mean? I think everything had been given to me up until a certain point. I'd never had to wake up at 6 o'clock and go to a job for someone that I didn't like, to work for a goal that, you know, wasn't going to benefit me until 12 months down the track when I'd saved up enough cash to whatever, right? Like, we started making money. We started living a lifestyle that should be earned, quite frankly. You know what I mean? Like, to fully appreciate it, it should be earned. I should have had to have done the hard yards and really put in the work to appreciate what was going on, and I didn't. So therefore, I didn't know how to appreciate it. It was just normal to me. It just was. It was, and I think that, don't get me wrong, throughout the process, I was forever grateful. And I knew that what was going on was amazing, but I didn't know how different it was, nor what the long-term effects of that would be. So fast forward 6 years down the track, the name Waetford is just a kid that was once on TV, and now it's back to, okay, now you got to fight for your relevancy, and you got to fight for your talent, and you have to become better, and you have to work, and you have to go in the studio and work for hours and hours and hours when you don't want to. That concept of putting in work when I didn't want to was so foreign. So I think that kind of led to a very lazy, a very unmotivated, and a very led to momentary views on happiness, and had such highs and lows, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would experience these, someone's booking for a show, yeah, let's go, there's thousands of people, we're playing, and now I haven't booked a show for 3 months and I'm depressed. You know what I mean? So I think there was just this constant push and pull of validity, and as you mentioned before, right, like you said that your extroverted self, I can't remember exactly what you said, but had something to do with your search for approval. I 100%, relate to that. I was just constantly seeking for good job, and you're doing good, and we're proud of you, and we love you. And when I didn't get those things, no matter how great the achievement was, because of all the success that I'd had, it didn't equate to anything in my mind or in my heart, and it wasn't fulfilling. I was signing ridiculous record deals and traveling the world, and if I didn't at that time, I didn't have that support network around me to be like, keep going, bro, you're doing a good job. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I never had that, so it was just like, am I doing a good job? Am I where I'm supposed to be? You know what I'm saying? So I forever doubted, and I don't blame my family or my friends for that, because we were all in the same boat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How do we handle this?
None of us knew how.
There's no handbook for that.
There's no handbook for that. There's no blueprint. It's not something that I said to my mom, because I think to this day she still holds herself. It's funny because we can go into this further as well, but I think she still holds herself somewhat responsible that it didn't work how she thought it was going to work then. You know what I mean? We were traveling the world. We were living in LA. We were living in Europe. We were making comfortable living. We could really do whatever we wanted, right? And then we came home. We fell into debt. In the space of 6 months, I owed the tax department like 50K. And it was like, holy shit, what did we do wrong? You know what I mean? And I think that, yeah, she still holds herself somewhat responsible for that. But I said to her, I was like, look, Mama, there was no blueprint. You know what I mean? It was really just you and I, and what we had known the world to be, and how we were going to operate within that, but in completely different circumstances to everyone else around us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I said, and I think one day she'll come to understand it, but I think even now still, actually, I think this last year's probably helped her, but one day she'll see that, and I know it already now, but that she'll see that period and those struggles and those lessons and those failures were everything that I needed. And I wouldn't change it for the world. And I know a lot of people can sometimes blindly say that out of, trying to find confidence in themselves, but I truly believe that I needed everything.
You've somewhat answered my next question, because what I was going to propose to you was, had it had worked out the way that you pictured it, like had you had gone to LA and the record deals got bigger and you followed the path of fame in which someone like a Bieber has, I don't know that you'd be the guy sitting in front of me. And
I don't want it. I don't want it. You know what? If you'd given me the last 10 years and then offered me that and said, hey, you have two choices. You can be where you are now, or you can be who you wanted to be, I would take this every day of the week. And I say that wholeheartedly. I think it's really through my failures and through the hardest times of my life that I've come to be who I am. And I think a lot of people can say that, right? But I've just been a little bit very blessed to have certain situations kind of equate to end result in which I felt truly alone. I lived in Africa for a year by myself and felt truly alone.
When was that?
Where or when?
When?
So I've been back for a year. I got back last Christmas.
Wow, so this is recent. Was that a decision to go and be somewhere where you could figure yourself out? Or was it something else that motivated that move?
Nah, I had no idea what way it was up from down, to be honest. It was my dad, to be honest. He, and it kind of led to a point where I was so terrified of making a decision, any decision, because the decisions that I'd made leading up to that point had all failed. And personally, business-wise, personally, everything had all failed. And I'd just been sat on my ass. I was broke. I was depressed. My dad spoke to me and he said, bro, like, just come. He lives in Switzerland. He was like, just come, just get out of there. Just your whole world around you is in shambles right now.
Yeah.
So just get out of there, just for a bit. Just come for a month, chill out. Chill. I got siblings in Switzerland who I love to death, who I wanted to spend time with. He was like, just come be with us. We can love you, we can look after you. And we started working on a business plan to like ecom, Amazon FBA, and we put this whole model together and we ordered samples, and I did this like 60-hour course in like a freaking week because I had nothing better to do and I was just grinding it out. And then when the course finished, I thought we were gonna, you know, launch the product, and he was like, nah. He was like, you've proven to yourself that you can work. Because I remember I was at a point, going back to what I said before, I just had no idea how to put effort into something if there was no immediate result. You know what I mean? If it didn't equate to a paycheck after I'd done what I was doing, which is what I've been so used to, it wasn't worth it. My dad said to me, he was like, work on this. It might not work. You're not going to get anything out of it. But just work on this. Show me that. And I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't really care about it. But it was just, I wanted to prove to myself that I could sit down and put energy and focus. And looking back on it now, it was nothing. It was such a small gesture, right? But just a simple, I suppose, ideology of, sitting down, committing myself to something that I didn't know was going to work. And then I did that, and he was like, do you want to go to Africa? And I was like, I've always wanted to go to Africa. And he was like, all right. I was like, where would you want to go? And I was like, I don't know. Had no money, had nothing. I was like, just thought he was just asking me questions. And like 2 minutes later, he's like, all right, you leave next week. What the fuck? What do you mean I leave next week? I said, you going to Africa? Look, where am I going? I don't know. I asked you where you want to go, so I booked Ghana. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, I was terrified, to be honest with you. I had no idea. I couldn't even leave the house in Switzerland at this point. I was terrified to go and catch the train and go into Zurich City, let alone go to another country.
Where did that fear come from? What was it that you were fearing?
I think, again, right, like I was just, I'd come up with this idea that I was incapable of making good choices. And I think what stemmed from that was just the fear of making any choice. You know what I mean? I was so scared of, and it was really sad, right? But I was just in a position where I was like, if I choose to do something, it's going to fuck up and I'm going to get hurt.
You know, it's funny, you mentioned to me before that you've enjoyed listening to Jordan Peterson's work.
Love Jordan.
One thing that he says is, you can be foolish to think that not making a decision is not making a decision.
100%.
You know,
I think he also touches
it comes with consequences.
Yeah, and he touches on it. He says, along the same lines where he says, running from something is accepting that it's bigger than you. And that was something that at that period of my life, I really needed to understand. You know what I'm saying? The running from this fear and this fear of making decisions is accepting that the ability to even make a decision is bigger than who I am. And that's not me. I still had, I didn't want to lose. I'm a very competitive person. And at this point in my life, I was losing. But I still had the urge to be better. And I wanted to win, and I wanted to prove to myself and to my dad and to my family and to everyone that I'd left behind in Australia that I would be okay. So yeah, I took off to Africa, and life just lifed, bro. I had no plan. I had no plan at all. I really just went over there, and the first place I went to was Ghana. Stayed in a little place called Kumasi, which is like the second largest city in Ghana outside of Accra. I learned the language.
One of my best mates is Ghanese.
Beautiful country.
Yeah, Joey Plum.
Beautiful country, cool people. I did a bunch of countries in Africa, but Ghana was cool. And then, I was working in an orphanage. So I worked in an orphanage for like 6 weeks. So I went out there and stayed in a house, and it was funny. So we get to this house, and like everything's all fenced up, and it's gated because it's quite a dangerous country and area. As well, the area was dangerous for the country. And as soon as I walk in, there's a bunch of people, same color as me, doing the exact same thing that I'm doing, right? And I just felt this instant sense of, like, I'm around people that are disconnected from the outside world, that are trying to find something more within themselves. But then on the other side of that was, none of these people know who I am. Nor probably do they care. So I was having this battle of waking up every morning just struggling to breathe, man. I just felt like I was so consumed by my world in Australia and what I'd just come from, that I was terrified to think about it or speak about it or communicate it with anyone. And then I kind of came to realize over a couple of weeks that they were all really, really beautiful people and really cool people, and they were all there for their own purpose, right? Some of them were there, I came to learn, for their own self-fulfillment, to make themselves feel like, and it was very evident just to feel good about what they were doing. Like when you really broke down the causes of why they were there, and I'd sit with them and I'd speak with them, I came to realize, I was like, damn, there's some of you that are just here to say that you've been here. That was sad. But then there was also some people that were there that were so selfless and adopted kids and delivered babies and had no interest in medical, but then went and worked in a hospital and are now studying to be a doctor and deliver children in countries that don't have the aid to do so. And yeah, it really opened up my world in a way in which I was able to really come to understand who I was around people who didn't know who I was. You know what I mean? Like in Australia, I kind of found that most of my life, wherever I went and wherever I choose to go, people kind of already had heard about me or had heard something or knew my music or... And I found that building relationships with people was really hard. It was like, ugh, you already have this preconceived idea of who you think I am. So to be in a group of people that had no idea was just the best. And it was like, you're loving me based off of what you see and what I give you. And I think it really gave me the opportunity to relearn who I was.
I have to ask, because I'm trying to figure it out in my head as you speak. This fear of failure, do you think that you would wrongly define failure or wrongly define success? What was that the product of?
Probably a bit of both, bro. Oh, yeah, I would say probably a bit of both. I think success is very personal. I think you define your own version of success, what that means. For some, success is being a billionaire and being alone but having money. Some success is being poor but being surrounded by beautiful people and people that love them. So I think that we really define that. I personally didn't know what that was to me, what that meant. But I also had known that what I was experiencing there, no level of success had ever equaled. You know what I mean? Like the people that I was helping, that I was speaking to and coming to understand and just listen to speak in the communities that I was in, no amount of success had ever made me feel the way that made me feel. So I think that was one of the first things I realized that kind of clicked. Hence the reason why I stayed so long. And the fear of failure, I think I had the blinders on, man, and like I was looking at a balcony that was consumed by weeds and looking at that balcony like this, right? And it was really that trip that allowed me to kind of trim away those weeds and see what was actually on display. And I think that those weeds were kind of my fears and my failures and everything that I'd kind of done in the last 12 months. And I wasn't the best person, man. I was in a horrible place. I was smoking heaps of weed, smoking like an ounce a week, doing drugs almost every weekend, in a toxic ass relationship, madly in love, but still nonetheless in a toxic relationship. I didn't really have a moral compass yet. You know what I mean?
You know, it's interesting because that analogy you just shared of, you know, trimming the weeds away, chopping the weeds away, whatever you'd like to call it. I've had a similar analogy that has helped me understand why I have the view on what I want from my life now. And I think that, I think that when you spoke about when you're right in front of those weeds and you can't see anything clearly. Yeah. You know, you can't see anything. All you can see is just fuzz and mess and the problems that you're in. Yeah. And I think for me, like over the last year, really, like not the last 3 months, but particularly the 9 months, year that come before that, financially I was so broken, and at times I've been so like mentally broken and have felt so stressed by my situation that I almost needed to like strip myself back and take 10 steps backwards to be able to see like the wider perspective. and figure out where I'm going. Like when you're so in it and you feel like you're underwater, you feel like you're drowning. Like you just need to get out for a minute. Man. Like put your feet down, stand up, get out of the pool. It's not that deep.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and like for me, that distance has given me perspective. And I would even say that you were speaking about how this really made a man out of you. For me, like I needed the challenges of the last year to figure out what success actually meant to me. Because I come from the most beautiful family who gave my sister and I such an abundance of love. I've never once, and this is such a privilege, I've never once woke up in the morning and not felt loved. Like I know that there's people who love me and I'm very grateful for that. But I got to a point in my career where I was pursuing financial success so hard that, and this was when I was in real estate, that I forgot that I have to look after my health. I have to do things that make me happy. Meaning and fulfillment is a hugely important part of how I define success, and I didn't understand that at the time. And so I had to hit a mental rock bottom and walk away from it to realise what was important to me. But then I fell into the trap of, I thought money was the devil. Because it made me feel like the pursuit of it had made me feel like I lost so much of myself that I forgot to make some money at all. And I had to sell my home. I went broke again. And then I had to find myself in a place where I was like, all right now, all I have is love and people I care about. And, the obvious necessities of a roof over my head and some food on the table. And, I'm lucky enough that my health's in a good place. And so what I'm trying to acquire, now I understand what's actually true to me. And, for me, that gave me so much clarity in moving forward this year into a place where I'm now defining success so differently. Because I think I've been a victim of, defining success and how I compared it to that of other people. And I know, like, your industry is ripe with that. We're both in the entertainment industry, essentially, where, you've only got to scroll for 5 minutes online and you can see how successful people seem to be. It's not a full picture of how they're actually handling life or how they feel, whether they're fulfilled at all or happy.
Yeah, I think it's a skill to understand how to... And I've always encouraged this, right? I think like every man and every woman should take the time to understand where they're at first before looking to anyone else. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of people do it the opposite way around, where they look to other people to see where they should be. You know what I'm saying? But I think the first step is, really like breaking down where you're at, who you are, what means the most, what doesn't mean anything, and then kind of building your future and what you see for yourself around that. And then I think it's okay to look to other people to be inspired.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? But I think if you don't have a clear understanding of what that means for yourself, that becomes comparison. It's very hard to find inspiration in that. Or if there is inspiration in that, I believe it comes from the wrong place. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that, especially when if you're at a point in your life where, your professionalism almost comes on par with who you want to be as a person, I think you should treat those with equal respect. But also I think they kind of go hand in hand in the sense that I've always found that when I'm good within myself, my business is good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But not the other way around. So I think that, I always try and, before any business venture, before any opportunity, and my first question, am I going to be happy? You know what I mean? And if that's quite a broad question, right? Like, am I going to be happy? But I think that if you can overall assess and break down what that opportunity entails and what it looks like for you over the next 6 months, okay, cool, it might be a bit stressful, but I'm capable of managing this stress. It's actually going to be super stressful and I'm not capable of managing this. Just breaking those things down to understand where it could lead you, I think is, for me personally, it brings so much more security into moving into those things. I'm now no longer afraid of making decisions. I can make them wholeheartedly, knowing, calculating to the best of my ability, how that's going to play out, but also being open to the fact that maybe it doesn't play out like that. But I think that, having the overall sense of understanding, that all comes from having the overall sense of understanding where you are and who you are first. You know what I'm saying?
I completely agree. I watched this monk. I know he's famous because I've seen him speak on so many different interviews before and clips of him on different stages.
What's his name? I think I know who you're talking about.
Oh, bro, I was going to say he's got a bald head, but
He
they
does,
all
though.
do.
I know,
They all do.
but he does. That was going to be the first thing I said, the bald one, but but he's quite skinny and like narrow,
Yeah,
right? I
quite
I know what you're
lean,
talking
and
about. Very lean,
there's a very stoic and confident.
yeah.
There's there's a very confident tone in the way that he
Super
speaks.
like philosophical.
Yes.
It's like you know what you're saying because it resonates in the deepest parts of your soul. I know exactly what
100%.
you're talking about.
And
He's very monotone.
he
No,
is.
he's not
He-
monotone. I wouldn't say monotone, but very, very calm.
He's
like,
very calm.
Yeah.
I seen him speaking the other day, and there's something that he said that really stood out to me. He said,
Did you say that? Sorry, I just went to Google.
"Yeah, but you grabbed the wrong part of the cup."
Sorry, keep going.
He said that we have fooled ourselves to think that everything is 100% good. He said, life is yin and yang. It is good and bad. It is right and wrong. It is part breathe in, part breathe out. It is part success and part failure. He said, and it's almost always 50%. He said something along those lines. And for me, it was very refreshing to hear because I identify in myself that whilst I don't seem to think that I fear failure, there's a part of me that clings on, especially in this professional world, to this idea that it's got to all work out perfectly. Like that this has to grow to be the biggest podcast in Australia in the next couple of years, or like, have I done it wrong? Did I miss something? And then there's part of me that remembers, well, the reason I do this is not because I think it needs to like be hugely successful financially, but for me personally, I get the most joy out of speaking to you today. And I'm like, and we've tried to make this happen for a little while now.
Ages.
Right? And like the funny thing is that like I'm sitting here right now going, this worked out the most perfect way it possibly could have. Because I don't know that, like every day is different. I feel like we're having this conversation today, and this could have been a completely different conversation had we've had it 2 months ago when we were both a little bit more stressed, or
100%.
you know. But I love that idea that like it doesn't all have to work out the way that you envision it working out in your head to teach you what it needs to teach you.
How recently are you coming into that mindset of becoming at peace with that?
One of the best things I ever heard was a friend of mine and a really successful guy who I look up to in this space in Australia, Dylan Buckley. Dylan Friends, the podcast. Dill had me on his show basically because I was knocking down the door to get on there, and we created a great friendship. And whilst I don't speak to Dill every week or every month, our conversations are quite sporadic. I know that we both catch little bits of each other's work, and I listened to one of his conversations the other day, and he spoke about how he used to want to be like Rogan, which I get, man, because there's a huge part of, there's a huge ambition in me to do great at whatever I do, and I think a lot of that is healthy. But I'm learning to walk the line between ambition and appreciation, and this is what he spoke about, that he recognises now as a fairly new dad, that he's in a position right now where he's built a company. It's called Producy. It's like a production house where he's got this network of people who have all got shows on his platform. And he's like, I hope one day that all of their shows are bigger than mine, because ultimately, like, I love the conversations I'm having at the moment. It's very fulfilling, but I can also go away for a couple of weeks with my wife and my son and have the best time. And I kind of like in that scene, something that really spoke to me, that success is the full picture of the pie chart,
100%.
not just one.
100%.
Because I know that what I hugely desire and dream about every day is I cannot, man, when I tell you this, I say it with such conviction, I cannot wait until Soph and I are married, watching a couple kids play sport on Saturday, enjoying a coffee in the sun. But I can't wait for that.
For sure.
Because that's what I loved about my childhood.
For sure.
And I'm like, I can't wait to be like the footy dad or the ballerina, like the ballet dad or whatever it is.
That's
you
what
know?
I said before. Like you said that's your success, and I think that's beautiful.
Yeah,
You
and
know
like,
what I mean, I think like that the ability to see the whole picture, I think will eventuate to you getting there.
so let me ask you this.
Sorry, I have one more question
Yeah,
based
go
off
for it.
based
Go
off
for
off the off that sort of thing. So I asked you, like how recently you'd come into understanding that failure is just, you know, a part of what we do, and there's beauty in that, right? And the whole yin yang concept. Do you ever feel, or have you ever felt like there's a time in your life in which you've welcomed failure? Because, and I ask you this because I think that in the last 6 months I've come to realize that it's in those times, it's in the failures where I become just a little bit more of who I am.
Yeah.
In the successes, you know, you come to appreciate your failures, right? But I feel like it's very, you know, the deeper, more fundamental stuff of what makes me who I am has always come from my hardships. I come to appreciate it when I'm doing well. And I ask you because I think that over the last sort of 6 months, I've now gained the ability to be able to stand in those storms and welcome them with open arms, knowing that it's going to be hard and that it's probably going to suck. And I might cry a little bit, but I know that as a man, I'm capable of learning what I have to learn in that period of time. And that because it's happening, there's something that I need to learn.
So let me answer this in the most honest way that I can.
Okay.
And there's maybe a bit of my ego that doesn't like to admit this. So I would say that I completely agree with you that the greatest lessons and the greatest insight I have gained as to what's important to me, what fulfills me, what I'm passionate about, like who I am, that's answered that question, has come from my greatest hardship and adversity. Like having lived with CF for 27 years, hardship teaches you something. However, you ask me, have I learned to welcome it? And I'm thinking back right now, in all honesty, outside of today actually, funnily enough, is the 3-year anniversary of my first ever marathon that I ran with bleeding lungs for CF.
Holy
That was
heck.
the only time, and I say this out of truth, the only time in the last couple years that I can remember setting my sights on something and knowing that I very well might fail in the process of trying to achieve it. And maybe for me that identifies a desire to be comfortable, or maybe just to stroke my ego a little bit too much.
I mean, it could be both, right? But I think that your situation is very, especially that situation, running a marathon, that level of medical condition, is a huge decision. And a huge commitment. And I think a massive, I think that even if there is a sense of ego involved in that decision, I don't think it's a bad, I don't see all ego, and a lot of people disagree, I don't see all ego as being truly negative. I think when you can conceptualize what an ego is and the negative sides of it, and kind of harness its ability to drive you in situations like that, I don't believe it's a negative sense of ego. I think that because also your ego is something that you determine for you. I mean, for me personally, my ego is something that I determine for myself. It's never been about what other people think. It's never been about, maybe it's something that I prove to myself, maybe my level, because I can be cocky sometimes, man. Like I'm so competitive in the sense that
I feel you.
that like, you know, if you know, there's an absolute gun sprinter and he's got a ridiculous time with a 100-meter sprint, I'll try and beat him.
Yeah.
And in that moment in time, I believe that there's a chance I could. But that's bullshit, you know what I mean? But I think that when you're aware of that and the negative sides to that, because it's definitely negatives that can set you up for failure, being aware of that, but then still letting that to have a crack and have a shot. I think there's positives in that situation. But you're looking at me like
No, I completely agree.
Okay.
Because I think that ego gets a bad rap. I think that vanity gets a bad rap. And whilst there are, like you said, negatives that come from them, I believe the negatives to be when you're not self-aware enough to know that they're controlling you.
Exactly.
But I think there's so many positives.
100%.
Because sometimes blind self-belief is all you have.
100%.
Now, it's funny recently. So I do a bit of keynote speaking. The first thing I speak about on stage is
You do
how
a bit of what?
keynote speaking.
Keynote speaking.
Yeah, so like I speak on stages at conferences and
Just with notes or like...
no. So it's just basically what they call a motivational speaker is a word.
Okay.
I don't know that I love the word motivational because I think motivation is very fleeting, right? So I don't know if I like that word.
Why do you think the motivation is very fleeting?
Well, I think that if you're relying on motivation, you'll do very little for very short periods of time.
I agree. I've always and it's funny, I have the same perspective on religion, but we can touch on that.
So we will touch on that because I think that's an interesting conversation. But I think I attribute a lot of my success to discipline, belief, resilience, perspective, purpose, right? And when I'm on stage, I talk about self-belief, resilience, perspective, and purpose. And so when I talk about self-belief, I talk about, and listeners of the show will have heard this, so I'll kind of brush over it. But my first ever doctor, when I was just a couple months old, told my parents that I'd be better off with a terminal illness that would kill me or I'd miraculously recover from because CF would ruin my life. And they stood up and said, "You'll never see us or our son again," and walked out of the room. And they found a doctor who had a really positive and optimistic view of my future. And I think about that and I'm like, that was all wrapped up in hope and somewhat delusional belief because there was no evidence. I've heard Stephen Bartlett and Chris Williamson talk about how belief is evidence. Belief is based on evidence. But I think sometimes belief has to be delusional, man, because the antidote to hopelessness is hope.
Yeah, but I think delusion, I don't think is the right word. I think the ability to believe, you know what I mean?
It's important.
It's so important. I don't think that makes you delusional, because I always, and I think in your situation it's a testament, right? Like crazier things have happened. You know what I'm saying? I think that's such a beautiful mindset to carry in life, and it doesn't work for everyone. But I think that when you can be in the darkest, deepest hole and still stand there and be like, I'm gonna be okay. I think it translates and carries so much further than a negative defeat
100%
would. You know what I'm saying? And it sounds, maybe it sounds a little bit easy for me to say or whatnot, but I truly believe that like that level of positivity and self-confidence, self-belief, even in times when it's not warranted, is necessary.
Well, here's the thing. So belief is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? In the sense that what you believe dictates how you behave, and how you behave often dictates your outcomes, and your outcomes often then reinforce beliefs, right? And so the thing is, if you believe positive things, you act in a positive and optimistic manner. And then hopefully the outcome is great. The outcome is uncontrollable, right? But then I can assure you one thing, that like, whilst I can't assure you that the outcome will be great if you believe positive things and act in a positive way, what I can assure you is that if you believe negative things and then your behaviour dictates that of a negative belief, like, well, fuck, what's the point? I'm not even going to try because it's not going to happen for me. It'll never happen. Like,
100%.
you know, there's that old saying, the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't are both right. And so it's like, you may as well be positive about it. You may as well think that it's there for you. You may as well believe that, you know, you can be a great podcaster, because if you didn't, you'd probably never start.
Yeah, for sure.
And
but I think that's a massive battle for some people.
Massive barrier.
Huge.
And like you said before, you know, we spoke about this off cam. You can kind of understand that because some people come from some harsh conditions, but I always challenge the first belief. Like, my parents had no reason or no evidence to believe that my life would be anything but another sad statistic. Because they decided to be positive, here I am. And that has been the story of my life, man. I'm maybe, it's funny, like, I believe that one day...
It reflects in you so clearly as well.
I appreciate that.
I see
That's a great
that
compliment.
in everything that you do, right? Like, I think there's a level, and I yearn for that, there's a level of appreciation and gratefulness in you that I think only your experiences and what you've been through can teach you to the level that I see in you. You know what I mean? Like I'm very appreciative as well, but like you light up, man. Like you're just like you're so. Like, as soon as I saw you, I was like, holy shit! I was like, damn! I just instantly felt like comfortable.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You know what I mean? And I think that's like a testament to how you've also come to conceptualize and understand what you've been through. Because you could have also easily gone. Your parents may have come to the table and been supportive and loving and whatnot. But I've seen cases in which
that doesn't work.
You still make a decision not to be that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's a massive testament to you to be able to stand here as a man speaking to us and know that like there's so many active decisions that you've made along the way. I can see that you're very grateful for your parents, but solely, you know, within you as your own man. Like I could see that.
I appreciate
that's
that,
so
brother.
Cool, bro.
Because that's a huge compliment. Like that's for me maybe one of the most nice compliments I can receive.
For sure, I think, but it's and I've carried that, man. Like
for sure,
and you, I can see that, like you, yeah.
Well, I just think that
I want to meet your girlfriend, bro. Shade out,
you
blow me away, bro. I want to meet you. I want to see her.
You have to, man. She's the best, and for me, there's a. You know, it's crazy, man. So I'll tell you something. So talk about this appreciation. I know we're getting a little bit off track. I promise to the listeners we'll get back to you in a minute.
Sorry.
We were sitting there the other night and she was just showing me a random video. I'm an emotional cat. It doesn't take much for me to shed a tear.
Okay, cool.
I'm a crier.
Yeah.
I'm a lover. I'm a laugher. Yeah. I'm an emotional guy. Yeah. Like I respond to everything quite openly, you know. And I believe I have been my whole life. And it's maybe because I have, like you said, the level of appreciation that, you know, shit means stuff to me. And so we were sitting on the lounge just over there the other day, and she's randomly just watching a video of this girl showing her partner that, you know, they're having a baby. And she's got the little baby clothes lying out on the bed, you know, the photo of the ultrasound and, you know, the positive pregnancy test. And he walks in and he's just like in disbelief, so happy. Bro, I'm fucking bawling my eyes out, right? Because I'm like, I never thought that I'd get the opportunity. I had this limiting belief for the longest time that I'd never fall in love with someone I could create a family with.
Wow.
That someone wouldn't believe in my future the way that I did. And so I'm sitting next to the person I love, talking about that, watching someone else experience that. Mate, I'm crying my eyes out. Because that's all I want, right? And so I am the most emotional person because I appreciate life so much and ever experienced so much. And I believe that's what, you know, like death is this very taboo topic. But I think we have to understand and think about death differently to which we do. Of course, it's a sad experience, but I'm so fearful of losing the people I love. But that's why I love them so heavily. That's why I love them so much. Is because I know that life is fragile. And so like my experience has taught me that. You know. But let's get back to you for a minute.
That's beautiful, though, bro. Say that.
I appreciate that.
Wait, can I just say one thing on that? Though? I think that's such a. I think like you speak. I think that it should be known that being emotional is a blessing, man. Like I think it's to be able to feel. Like what greater gift is there in life to be able to truly feel? You know what I'm saying? Imagine being hardened to the world or to emotions, and sometimes people's lives take them down a journey where they haven't felt like they've had a choice and they end up that way, right? But I think to be in a position now where you feel so deeply is the biggest blessing. It's a great driving force. 100%. Yeah. 100%. I wish I could feel more sometimes. I feel like sometimes I'm jaded by my experiences and hence the reason why I can understand how people become hardened to it. But I'm actively making a decision to try and take everything in, you know what I mean? And take it on board. And I think I found a good balance between being emotional and logical. I think I will say that I have a good compass on what that balance looks like for me and you know, how to maintain a peaceful mind while feeling what I'm supposed to feel. But I just wanted to say that I think that it's a huge blessing. No, I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about, it sounds like to me, Ghana and this trip, this time away, like this opportunity to disconnect from all of the pain that you felt, which so much of it seems like was attached to the environment that you were in. For sure.
you know, you go to Ghana, you travel. It's almost like the revival. It's the time in which you get to figure out who you are, you get to ground yourself. But then you make a decision to come home. How do you come home and stay true to the path that you've now discovered?
I think just through the people that I met, man, and like the experiences that I got to experience. So it was in the first 2 weeks I was being there. So I was working at the orphanage, and pretty much like the sisters that worked there were just horrible to us. Like, had no time, had no love, had no. They didn't see that we were fit to be there, and I think their perspective on why we were there was all about us and making ourselves feel better. And I understand why they came to see that. Because a lot of the people that were there do. Like, we walk into the orphanage and you know, like we go and wake the babies up and change their nappies, and there's like 160 kids between like 3 rooms, and it's jam packed, and over 80% of them are disabled. So it's like a very like intense, heavy job. And yeah, they were just being like really, really, really like cold and shut off towards us, throwing our, you know, the baby's food and plates at us, and not at us, but down to us, like not giving them to us, throwing our aprons at us, not talking to us, laughing at us, speaking in Twi, and a lot of the volunteers that were there were only going to be there for like a week or 2 weeks, and that was it, right? They would leave. But I knew I was going to be there for longer than that. So I'm like, yo, I got to get to the bottom of this, man. Like, if I'm going to be here, like, I need to just try and understand what's going on so that I can choose how I go about, you know, being here, and how I can fit the role here best to suit them. They've been here their whole lives. Like, there's obviously something going on. Like, they're not the ones at fault here. So I said to the rest of the house that it was split up in 2. There was a medical division and like the rest of us were working in the orphanage. And I said to, there was 6 sisters working at the orphanage. I said to the medical kids, I was like, hey, can 6 of you come and fill in for the sisters? Like, I want to take them out and just try and get to know them a bit better. So there was like a zoo down the road. They agreed to it. So there was like a zoo down the road, and we went and bought like a box of beers and some KFC, and I took them on a minibus to the zoo, and we walked around. It was a horrible zoo. It was like 3 animals, and they were chained to trees and poles and stuff, and I was like, this sucks, this is horrible.
Sad, yeah.
It was really sad, but they had a good time. Like, they loved it. It was just out of they work 7 days a week, so they never get breaks.
For sure.
So we went to the zoo, and at the end of it, we were sitting down and we all had a beer, and we were chilling around and talking, and they speak very good English. And I said to them, I said, look, I was like, forgive me for my ignorance, but I'm trying to understand why you don't like us. And she laughed. She was like, and she said, she was like, you white people come and you love our kids, and our kids love you. You feel so good about this, and then you leave, and nothing changes. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, we're really not doing anything here to help. I said, we're teaching these kids that when someone comes and loves them, they leave. Because they do. You know, you go into the orphanage and you pick 1 or 2 kids and you favorite them. Like, it's human, you know, you become attached to those kids, and you look after them, and you baby, and you only change their nappies, and you feed them, and you look after them, and build this really special bond with them, and put a lot of time into them. And then once your period is done there, you leave. They have no idea what's happened. All they know is that someone's come into their life, they've loved them, and they've left. And you set this really bad idea of what love is for them. And the sisters know this, right? And I asked them, I was like, so look, are we helping? And she said, if you're going to adopt, of course. She said, if not, it's better you don't show up. So I stopped going to the orphanage. And it was like, I think I stopped going for like 4 days. And then every afternoon they would get back from the orphanage, and they would come into me, and there was this one girl, she was a Canadian chick, and she'd just make it a part of her day to like let everyone know that I hadn't shown up to placement. Oh, Jai stayed home again. It's day 2, she'd come home first thing. Oh, Jai stayed home again. Day 3, oh, Jai paid $1,000 to come here and do nothing and just sit on the couch and work on his laptop. He could have stayed at home to do. And I'd never said anything to her, right? And then on the last night, we sat down at dinner, and she made a toast, and she was like, can we just speak about why Jai stopped coming to placement? Like, I just want to understand what's going on. I was like, we can speak about it. I said, but like, to be honest, I'd felt that like what I had come to understand through speaking with the sisters was for me. I said, but now this moment is kind of showing me that maybe it's time to just to shed a little bit of light. I said, have you ever thought about the idea that, you know, when we go in, and everyone understood because we're in the same boat, when we go in and we pick one child and we favouritize that child all day, every day for, you know, a few weeks, that they become attached to us? They're like, yeah, of course. And I was like, and, you know, hands up here who has a plan to adopt one? And no one put their hands up. I was like, okay. I said, so like, can we please just maybe take the time to consider that all we're doing is teaching these kids bad habits in love. And when someone comes and loves us, they leave. I said, imagine. They said, because we're not going to be the first to do this. So when we leave, someone will replace us, and they'll do the same thing. I said, psychologically, what does that do for a child? Yeah. I said, so I think we should really, really think about, you know, what we're doing here. And then that night, there was this little building next to like the house we were staying in, and it was only half constructed, but there was a window on all sides of the wall. And I would go up there every night and I would pray, and every direction I looked in, I could see these little red flashing lights, and all the power lights, like they're just, but the garden is very, very flat. And for as far as the eye could see, I could just see these towers. And I realized, I was like, I'm all alone. Because no one in that conversation really understood me or understood what I was trying to get at. There was a lot of, they had their own ideas of what they were doing there, and they didn't want to accept that maybe that's what was going on. Even after me speaking directly to the source of what was going on, and that broke me a little bit. I felt a little bit out of place, and I remember I called my dad and I was crying, and I said to him, I was like, Dad, I've come here to help people, and I realized that I'm just making the problem worse. And he's like, are you okay? And I was like, not really. And he said to me, he was like, look around you. Are you okay? And I was like, oh shit, yeah, I am actually. I'm fine, you know what I mean? I'm fine. And then he hung up on the phone, and that was it. And I kind of think after that moment, that kind of set the precedent of I'm going to be okay. And maybe this isn't about helping people. Maybe this is about planting seeds that I'll never see grow. Maybe this is just about being true to myself and traveling and meeting and helping where at first I see fit, and then coming to learn that it's not actually helping, but I'll find something else to do. And that's what I did, right? I spent the next 9 months just traveling around, working in schools. We built a school. We raised money to build a school there. I started like a little side hustle tourism company where I was going around and selling like weekend trips to all these people in hostels and whatnot. And it just really opened up my eyes to the world that I lived in. So then in turn, and back to the question that you asked, coming home, how did I stand by the things that I'd learned there? It was through those experiences, and it was through meeting those people and truly coming to love them. I stayed for a minimum of 6 weeks in each country that I went to. So I had to build my own world and build my own, little safe space around me, and come to know the lady that worked at the grocery store, the guy at the gym, and the people in the hostel, and you know what I'm saying? And it was through becoming genuine friends with these people and sitting down and hearing their stories that upon arrival back home, I had to do everything in my power to become better in myself and work as hard at that as I could, or else I was letting these people down, because they will never have the opportunity that I have to do so. Professionally, personally, like the things that we're exposed to in Australia and through the internet. A lot of these kids don't even have the internet. They've never been on Instagram, never been on Google. They've got books and stories, that's all. And I think that it was beautiful in the sense that they come to understand who they are within their world, but in the world outside is very limited to them. So I think when I got home, I was just like, for these kids and for these people who I truly fell in love with, I need to do everything in my power to better myself professionally, personally, and make the most of the opportunity that they will never have. And that was it, right? And I stand by that.
Man, there's something you said there. You had to plant seeds that you'd maybe not see grow. And there's a quote that I'll likely butcher here, but it's something along the lines of, the future of humanity is dependent on men who will plant trees that they'll never enjoy the shade of.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
You know, and I think that's a real testament to purpose. Like purpose being the act of doing something in service of others.
And I think that was probably that's what my dad told me that, and that's what helped me find comfort in, and in the lot bigger picture is not seeing results to something instantly. Why do you work for results? I think that he said to me, he was like, you are touching people in ways that you may not see the benefits of or reap the rewards for yourself, but it's not about you. And I think that really kind of restructured the way that I thought about purpose and working towards something. What if it's not about me? What if I just do what feels right at the time? What if there is no goal for it? I mean, what if there is no reward for it, for me? Maybe there is, whatever, right? But like, stop working or stop acting to receive something in return. And it changed my whole perspective on, then we went to build a school, and then we went and just started donating money to people, and it opened my whole world and my whole travels up. I was just like, holy heck, now it's fine. I'm not acting to see you become better. I'm not acting so you can come and give me a hug and thank me for it. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And I think that I was so much more fulfilled by that. And now I still speak to, I've got some of these guys on WhatsApp. So a lot of the guys in Africa have SIM cards, but they don't have phones.
Okay.
And what they'll do is they'll wait to find someone who has a phone and they'll plug their SIM card in. And they just go on a rampant. yo, what's up? So sometimes every once in a blue moon, I'll get a phone call or a text message from these guys.
Yeah.
Hey, Jai, brother. And I'm like, yo, what's up, man? How you doing?
That's great.
How the hikes there? Yeah, man, I could share some crazy stories with you. It's a long conversation, but.
So tell me right now, that looks like there's many things happening in your life. What do you really want from this period? Like if you look at, you said that you're 25 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
This is a very, very formative time of your life. It feels like your career is coming back into flow in many regards. 100%. Like I know you're doing some acting at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, there's music coming soon.
Yeah.
You know, you're a fucking fashionista, head to toe. Like you're a cool cat, man. You're a handsome cat. There's things happening for you.
Thank you, bro.
But like, what do you want right now from this period of your life?
Again, we spoke about it before, right? Like I think I just want to be happy, man. I know it's so broad and it's like such a kind of cliche thing to say, but I believe I've experienced enough of success in my eyes to know that there's no amount that is worth peace of mind and happiness. There's none. There's none. There's really none. I believe there's phases in life when you can be calculated as to taking stress on board, and sometimes that stress is necessary, to achieve the goals that you want, but setting the standard of what those goals are and how you can achieve them. I think that your peace of mind and happiness should always be at the forefront, because I believe that some people get to where they want to be, but they're not where they want to be. By the time they get there, they're not surrounded by the people that love them. Maybe they've lost a part of themselves along the way, but they got the car, they got the mansion, they got the job, but there's no one around them.
Yeah.
Or they're not happy, or they've hardened themselves to a part that they once cherished. So I think being calculated in the sense that the goals that you want are equally as important as how you get them. So I think now what I want from this phase is to look back at the end of every month and know that I haven't sacrificed any of my being to get to the end of that month, or any of my character, or any of my happiness. And if I'm not where I want to be, as a goal or in certain success, but I'm happy, it's fine. You know what I mean? But I know for a fact that if I get there and I'm not happy, I'll kick myself. But I won't let that happen. I know I won't let that happen. I'm blessed to say that I have the enough self-awareness to know when I'm slipping in and out of what's going on. And I got a beautiful girlfriend, bro, and she grounds me so much.
Maybe we'll have to do a double date.
I would love to, bro. Shake on that right now. I would love to. That would be beautiful.
That'd be great.
Be sick.
Because I feel like we'd have a really good time.
For sure. And she's young, man. She's coming in. She's really... And it's beautiful for me because I get to watch her. She's only 21, but she's coming to see the world in ways that I know she hasn't done before. I don't know whether it's something to do with me or just what we're doing together, but I see her mind shift and change, and I see her find peace in things that she once stressed over. She came to me the other day and she was like, like this girl reached out to me, and I just don't know if I'm happy with the way things ended. I don't know if that's something that I want to, put time and energy into. But 6 months ago, felt the need to entertain everyone that came to the table and had to be this version of herself that was accepted and whatnot. And she just spoke to me, she was like, I don't know if and I was just like, it's small, right? But like, for me to be able to witness that in her is one of the most rewarding things as a partner. To see them grow and change and shape to become who sometimes they can be before they know. I don't know if you feel the same for your girl, but it's like, I see this version of my girlfriend that I would never force or never groom to become, but I know she's capable of it if that's what she wants for herself.
I like that.
You know what I'm saying? And now to see her become that version is so fulfilling. And sometimes it's just a simple conversation where it's, hey baby, maybe you don't need that. Have you thought about, right. Or what do you think about just putting questions to her and seeing her conceptualize them in her own way and come to her own conclusions? I think is so attractive and beautiful. Like to be able to witness it in someone that you love. So cool.
Incredibly cool. Like I reflect on, Soph and I have been together 13 months today. And man, we're one of the couples that celebrate month on month.
Because they're always 6 months today as well.
Right. How exciting is that? Wow.
So cool.
And, you know, it's funny for me that we spoke about this the other day. I've had a lot of growth in the last couple of years of my life. The last couple of years of my life have taught me a lot, but none more than the last 13 months. Having a partner I have grown so much, and thankfully she can say the same for herself. And one of the things I wrote in the card that I wrote her on our anniversary for our 1 year was the joy for me has been in loving her and loving her and making her feel safe to be exactly who she is.
Who she wants to be, yeah.
Like,
I saw someone speak on that and it hit me so hard. And I think that goes both ways, right? Like also knowing that you're in a space where you can be who you know you can be.
To find that peace.
Right, right.
You know, you spoke about this before off camera, which is part of the reason I knew we were going to have a great conversation. You said that for you, a lot of your philosophy around love was in being the man that could provide that for your partner. Like, talk to me about that philosophy.
I think it really stems from, again, going back 2 years ago and being scared of accepting responsibility to now being in a position where I pride myself on responsibility. And sort of knowing that I can be proud of the version that I am, but more importantly, who I want to be because of what somebody else inspires. You know what I mean? I don't find, especially in a relationship, in love, I think that that's something that you should really yearn for. Is who do I want to be? One, for myself, but two, as your man and as your boyfriend. And how can I help you and how can I nurture you so that you feel, as I said before, comfortable and free to be who you want to be? I think that is the most beautiful thing. Life was meant to be shared. You know what I mean? I believe we were created to share. We were never meant to be in complete solitude.
No.
And I think that a relationship, and a good and a healthy relationship, is something that more people our age should find pride in. I think it's become cool almost not to be. I think the ones that, it might sound a bit discriminative, but I think the ones that have figured out, you know, who they are and what's important to them are longing for a relationship, right? And the ones that aren't are in the clubs fucking around on a weekend and just trying to get with as many as they can. Like, I think that someone needs to set a stigma where it's like, yo, like there's something, you know what I mean? Like, this is the new it. I think that the world and our generation would be so much happier and so much more certain with themselves if they had someone to share with.
Once you find that right person, it is, and I find this to be an interesting conversation because I've had the privilege of this year speaking at a lot of high schools, and I speak to a lot of kids who are like 16, 18. Bro, I'll invite you next time I'm doing something, and I found myself feeling this sense of obligation, being compelled to have a conversation, particularly because one of the things that's really shocked me, and I was in disbelief of this year, is the stats around domestic sexual and emotional violence against women. I couldn't believe that 1 in 3 women report being physically, emotionally or sexually abused. Like, to me, I was just like, I can't believe that. And then Soph said to me, well, you can't believe that because you look around at your group of mates and none of them are those kind of men. She's like, you exist in a very unordinary but beautiful group of people. And part of that is because of, you know, the fact that I know who I am, what I want for my life. So I'm very grateful to have that group of men around me. But I know that not everyone does. And so I found myself after that conversation and having spoken to a lot of people about this the last couple months and how grim some of these stats are, that a lot of women don't feel safe in relationships. And, you know, that upsets me as a son, as a brother. I'm very lucky that my sister's with a great man and has been for 6 years, and so she's got a beautiful relationship. I'm very lucky that I get to be that guy for Soph. You know, I found myself at this school recently and talking to a group of Year 12 students. So they're 17, 18, maybe some of them are 16 if they're, you know, punching above their weight academically. And, you know, I'm sitting there in front of this group and there's 100 of them. And at the end of my 45 minutes to an hour sharing my story, I said, I'll stick around for a while if anyone's got questions. And the teacher said, oh, we'd love that. So I stood at the front of the room. Every one of the kids got up and come to the front. And it's funny, the guys are always a little bit cooler and slower to move than the girls, right? So the girls all come to the front, start asking me about where I grew up and, you know, what kind of... I spoke about how there was a lot of insecurity in me at their age, and, you know, I used to have quite bad acne, and they would come up and ask what my skincare routine was. And I'm like, just the stuff at Woolies, like, don't ask me. Like, I'm not the guy to speak to about this stuff. And so we have quite a funny conversation. And then they leave, and all the guys approach. And all the guys start asking me at first, like the very surface level questions about, you know, would you interview this person? Who's the most interesting person you've spoken to? You know, it's a fun conversation. But then eventually someone breaks the ice and asks something a little bit deeper. And then they ask me about Soph. And I just immediately felt compelled to say something deeper about the subject. And I was like, let me tell you boys, your age right now, your mates will tell you, don't be a simp. You don't want to fall in love. You don't want a partner. I was like, the one decision to fall in love with a girl who has changed my life is arguably the single greatest decision I've ever made. And I felt compelled to talk about not only the power of love, but the responsibility of it. And how you have a responsibility to make that safe for someone.
And it's so cool that, like, that you have the ability to be able to inspire, not only through words, but through who you are and who people see you to be. You know what I mean? Like, I think you're gonna do amazing things, bro.
I appreciate that, brother.
And I think that, even back to what we said, right, about the planting seeds that you may not say grow, I think your life is gonna be full of that. And I think that
I hope so.
there'll be some, I think already, dude, like, I think there's so many people that you've touched that maybe you may never know, right? But I think that and I'm sure you already do, but, like, the sooner you conceptualize what that means and how many people you have the potential to affect and to change, the better, man. Like, bro, we need to start getting in front of some crowds and in front of some people. I'm gonna share the shit out of this for sure.
I appreciate that, brother.
100%.
That means a lot.
100%, dude.
I've some...
It's so cool. So much stigma around people speaking, man. And I think that, like, you really set a great example of what a man should be, and
I appreciate that,
and how he should talk and be open. It's cool, bro.
And I see that in you too. And that's why I've enjoyed this so much.
For sure, this has been fun. But there's a reason why the guys come up to you at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they didn't receive you, they wouldn't. They go to class. Right, but there's a reason why they will come up to you, and they sit you down, and they ask you the questions. You have a gift, bro. And I believe it's meant to be shared. I'm excited, bro. I'm excited to watch what happens, man. It's going to be cool. It's going to be so cool.
It is going to be very cool. Man, I want to ask you some rapid fire questions. I say rapid fire, but I want you to have the space to give honest answers.
Okay.
They're written here. Give me 1 second.
Scary.
Bear with me.
This is really hard for me as well. I have really bad ADD, so, like, I find myself in conversation. My brain operates faster than my mouth does. So I'll be explaining something, and then, like, it's relevant, and I always try and wrap it up, but, like, something more important comes in. So it'd be fun to listen back to this and see how we did.
Right, well, I have a compliment for you at the end of the show, which I think will ease your nerves.
Okay.
So bear with me. So is there a personal challenge that you'd wish you'd had addressed earlier in your life?
Yes. I think some things, a lot of things, as a man are sometimes meant to be learnt on our own, and if not, other people get hurt. And I wish that I had the awareness to be able to see that and to be able to listen sometimes. Sometimes I just didn't listen. Sometimes I needed to make the mistake myself to be able to see why it was wrong. And sometimes I wish I had the ability just to listen to the people around me and trust the people around me to know that, you know, it wasn't the right decision, so that other people didn't have to get hurt. There's so many points I look back on in my life where the lesson was for me, but other people got involved, and they didn't have to be. And I'm sure that, you know, they learned something else for it within themselves. But yeah, there's a few times I look back on and I'm like, I could have just been more of a man and listened and been more open, and other people wouldn't have had to get hurt. I think that's probably number one. And now,
that's a beautifully honest answer, and it makes me think that part of, and I would agree with this, part of what defines a man is taking responsibility.
For sure, 100%. I think it's probably, one of the most important characteristics that an honourable man can have is responsibility. I think to be able to look in any situation, look internally first before projecting anything. What am I doing in this situation? How can I be better? Why is he reacting to me like this? What have I done maybe to think? And how do I go about this first before even engaging in the other party or the other side of the story is hugely important. A lot of people are so quick, and a lot of men, I think it's like kind of a bit of like toxic masculinity around being so quick to point the finger at other people. Especially like smarter men, I know a fair few smart guys that are smart but lack self-awareness and lack the ability to accept responsibility.
Well, I like to call it not toxic masculinity, but undeveloped masculinity.
Undeveloped masculinity.
Because
That's
I think,
better, yeah.
I think if you're truly
It's
Mexican,
a bad word,
you take responsibility of that.
Yeah.
Question number 2 is, what is the greatest lesson, we've spoken about this, that failure has afforded you?
The greatest lesson that failure has afforded me? Resilience. I think overall, like, resilience to bounce back, like, and now, as I said before, right, like, I'm comfortable. Sometimes I can see, you know, and you can just see that storm on the horizon. You know what I mean? And sometimes you're looking at it, and sometimes you want to run, but you know it's inevitable and it's coming. Yeah. Now, instead of running, I'm able to stand and plant my feet and prepare. Can knuckle down.
I love that.
You know what I mean? And I'm able to. It's like I know I'm gonna be okay. It might suck, but I've been to the bottom of my world. Maybe not as low as yours, but in relativity. But I've been to the bottom of mine to know that I'm gonna be okay. You know what I mean? And I can stand there and I can weather it and I welcome it because I know that at the end I come out and I'm a bit thicker. I know I've got the confidence now. The clouds are moving on.
I love that, brother. I love that. Beautifully said. What can we expect to see from you in, you know, these coming months, this coming year?
To be honest with you, man, like, contractually, it sucks because it's such an open conversation, and I would love to just like fucking tell you. I can tell you off mic, but I can't say much at all, man. But we're filming a TV show. I've got an album coming, and that's all I can really say.
Do we know when the album's coming? Can you contractually give us rough dates?
No.
Okay.
Nah.
I did see something on your Instagram 4 days ago about 5 a.m. in London. Is that the title of a track?
So that's just, I got a track coming out with, his name's Zach. He's actually one of my business partners in another venture that we have. In Dubai, he is a producer, a gun prodigy of Australia, I believe. He is. And he just wanted to get a vocal on the track, and we worked together and we made a song, and he had like a really like sad situation happen with him and his girlfriend where pretty much they were dating for 6 months and she jumped on a plane and left and didn't tell him. And called him when she was in London. Yeah, and told him, hey, I didn't want to tell you what was happening, but I just thought it was easy if I just left.
Wow.
I don't know,
heavy.
Man. Yeah, and he was heartbroken, so we wrote a song about it. And I think there's a part of him that, it's kind of sad. There's a part of him that is putting the song out to kind of get back at her, but there's a part of him that I know it also really resonates with.
Yeah.
But he's young, man. He's a good dude. He genuinely has such a big heart. I feel like he struggles to communicate it sometimes. But I'm excited. He's one of those friends that I'm truly excited to see where that relationship goes for the both of us.
Well, unfortunate for your mate, but I'm really looking forward to hearing some new music.
That one's pretty like pop. It's not really Waetford orientated.
So what is your style now? What would you define it as?
It's quite like down tempo, like R&B.
It gives me
trap soul. Like
I kind of get that you're like. Are you a big Bryson Tiller fan?
Yeah, massive.
Yeah, I kind of got that because I've heard you share a few of his tracks, and I get that style is very similar to yours.
It definitely resonates in the album. Like it's definitely there. Like Party Next Door, Bryson Tiller, and The Weeknd. I would say probably like anyone that I've shared the album with so far has said that. Like it's kind of a cool mix of all three.
But I've spent some sad days driving around in my car listening to Party Next Door.
For sure, dude. For sure.
In Melbourne, man.
For sure. That's actually maybe a funny thing to touch on, is that like when listening to music, maybe that was on an old playlist or on a sad playlist, and it no longer affects you the way that it used to.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, like I think that's kind of like a good testament to the fact that I've dealt with whatever.
You've grown.
Yeah, you've grown, right? Like sometimes I listen back to music and I'm like, damn, I used to sit and cry to this shit. Now I'm just like, just singing along with it like it's nothing. You know what I mean? I think it's.
Bro, you know what's funny? I don't even know if the music spoke to me, but somewhat the sound spoke to me. It made me feel something. But I was telling Soph this the other day. I went through a period.
Vulgar, but yeah,
well, I went through a period. I reckon I would have been maybe early 20s. I was probably like 22, and I'd come back from Melbourne, just trying to find what made me feel fulfilled. Like loving family, loving people in my life, but mentally just felt like something wasn't right. And I wouldn't say I wasn't depressed. I just knew that I wasn't, like, life wasn't landing right, and I needed to change something. Something was taking a part of me away from myself. And man, I used to like walk around the streets at night and listen to Kings of Leon, just blaring, bro.
Wow.
In the darkness, I'd walk around and I'd just stare at the stars the whole time, and was just like, I don't know what I'm feeling right now, but it's not right. And it's funny because now I can look back on that and go, man, I found my way.
Yeah, it's cool, right? I think it's also super important to reflect.
For sure.
One of those times I think it kind of really, and I think I learned that professionally, right? Like I was always striving for what was next. Now which is J. Cole thing, where he's like, I was always focused on what was next, that like I'd get there and I never appreciated like the moment that I was in, and like what if that was the biggest that I ever became? And I was just always looking like to what was next, right? And I think I've learned that at a young age. It kind of forced me to stop and slow down. I'm grateful for where I'm at and get to the next thing and look back, and that was cool. Up to a certain point, like I think I was probably maybe like 21, which I was like probably the lowest in my professional career, but like just a little goal started fulfilling. Started being like,
for sure,
grateful for this. Thank you. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think that without that ability to reflect on those things, it can be hard to fully conceptualize, or really even just conceptualize it all where you're at. You know what I mean? Like you have to understand where you've come from. It's very important.
I have one last question for you.
Go.
The name of the show is A Lot to Talk About.
Yeah.
And that's because I believe in the power of diverse story and diverse conversation. If you could encourage the audience to start one conversation within their circles, their communities, their families, within the groups of people that they love, what would that conversation be?
That's such a hard question, bro. There's so many. I'm trying to like overarch. I think something to do around gratitude. I don't think it's quite specific to everyone, but I think it's such an important part of a positive, like the overarching. It's very, I think when you can be grateful for the little things and for what you have currently, so much stems from that. More blessings, more gratitude, more opportunities. I feel like when you can be grateful for what you already have, I'm just asking, what are you grateful for today? Because I met kids, and it comes from my personal experience of meeting people that have no reason to be grateful, but still are. You know what I mean? I think that in a world and in a country, that the most of us are blessed to live in if we're listening to this podcast, and have the ability to listen to this podcast. What are you grateful for? think it's just a
great place to start.
great place to start. Yeah, great place
To start. Brother, I have to say, this is my closing gratitude to you. I have to say that I did not know what to expect from today's conversation, because there was an intrigue, there was a curiosity that I had when I come across you for the first time in a long time, and it was a mutual friend of the show and in life, Anya, that I seen him share something with you at some form of event, and I just thought, what's happening in that guy's world now? And there was just some curiosity. I was like, I want to have a chat with this guy. I want to share a conversation and share in story. And I've not stopped smiling from the moment that you walked in.
Same, man.
And we've sat down and we've chatted. And I will go as far as saying, and I don't know if I've ever said this on the show, that this is my favourite conversation I've ever had on this platform.
Holy shit. That's cool, man.
For a few reasons. Because it's surprised me. There's so much more depth to you than I've ever known, I think, than what maybe the audience has ever known, and you shared your reasons behind, sometimes holding that depth close to your chest. But for me, the most important reason is, man, I see a beautiful human in you.
Thank you,
who's going to have a profound effect on not only the people in your life, but the people in your world. And for me, that's a privilege to be able to share that on a platform that means a lot to me. So thank you,
for
brother.
having me, bro. Straight out. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Grateful to be here, honestly.
My pleasure, man.
This is new
Cheers.
as well. Thank you, man.
I appreciate it.
We're going to be good friends.
We're going to be great friends.
100%.
We're going to be great friends.
100%.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of A Lot to Talk About. It means the world that you guys are in my corner, that you continue to listen to the show every week. And if you could do me a massive favor by following the podcast on whichever platform you listen to it, and sharing this episode in particular with just one friend that you feel would benefit from it, that would mean the world to me, and it would help the show grow. The more the show grows, the bigger the guests we get on, the more that we can do, and the more we can share and support you guys, the listeners, the viewers of the show. Before I go, I want to pay my respects and recognize the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and record this podcast. The Aboriginal culture has such a rich history in storytelling, and as a passionate storyteller, I really hope that the stories we share and connect with on the show can allow the many cultures that now call this beautiful land, Australia, their home, to come together and continue to respect the stories and the culture that make this the land it is today. Thank you so much for tuning into A Lot to Talk About. I'll catch you next week.